Live at 5, this is RT International from Moscow. Our top stories: the Israeli parliament okayed a controversial bill allowing the force feeding of Palestinian prisoners, a technique that human rights activists put alongside rape and torture. Got live comment coming up on that. Also, too, there are calls in Britain to send in the army in the French town of Calais as the migrant crisis there worsens. And Russia vetoes the establishment of an MH17 tribunal, saying the UN Security Council should not be dealing with criminal cases and calling for a more transparent investigation. Hello, my name's Kevin Owen. Thanks for joining us at 5 p.m. Moscow time here at RTHQ. Well, first in Israel is to allow the force feeding of prisoners on hunger strike. The country's parliament passed a law granting guards the freedom to resort to the practice. Rights groups have described the move as unethical. The UN Human Rights Commission calls force feeding an inhumane treatment indeed, saying it amounts to torture, which is illegal under international law. Comment too from the World Medical Association, saying the practice is never ethically acceptable. And the Geneva Convention prohibits subjecting detainees to any medical procedure not consistent with generally accepted medical norms. Our Middle East correspondent Paula Sleer picks up the story.
The law was passed after a lengthy parliamentary debate that roughly saw Israeli politicians divided over whether to approve it or not. What the law allows is for Israeli authorities to force feed prisoners who are on a hunger strike. And this addresses two main concerns they've had. The one is that there would potentially be a prisoner who was on hunger strike and who could ultimately die from that. And this could trigger wide-scale protests in the Palestinian areas. The law also covers security prisoners, and there's always been concern here that security prisoners use force-feeding tactics as a means to apply pressure on Israeli authorities. But it has been met with wide-scale condemnation from a range of human rights groups, including the Israeli Medical Association. They have issued a statement in which they say that this is a shameful law that shows the anti-democratic nature of the Israeli parliament. They say that it is a security measure that helps them to prevent violence. But of course now they're going to have more at their power to be able to enforce this.
To give you a better understanding of what force feeding amounts to, here's RT's interview with soldiers in America's notorious Guantanamo Bay prison who physically have to carry it out.
This tube is passed down the nose. Before it's passed down the nose, we lubricate it and we give the patient a choice. Do they want to have lidocaine, which is an agent that will numb the area, or if they want olive oil to lubricate the tube. It's a pretty quick procedure to put the tube in and make sure they get adequate nutrition. The patients I've had in the civilian world have said it feels strange.
Well, we contacted Human Rights Watch to get the organisation's take on the rubber stamp law now. This is the reply we received from them. HRW says the law appears to be aimed at gagging the protests of those being held indefinitely, in particular complaints about detention conditions, rather than ensuring their well-being. One of those who was held behind bars for a year without charge or trial was Khadar Adnan. The Palestinian went on hunger strike for over 55 days in protest against what Israel calls administrative detention. That brought him near death and triggered warnings from the Palestinian government and the Red Cross that it held Tel Aviv responsible for his fate. The 37-year-old was eventually released, though, and given a hero's welcome in his village with songs and fireworks. Here's his take on the law.
This is against a person's right to decide if he wants to eat or not to eat, if he's going to take the medicine or not going to take the medicine. This contrasts with the Israeli claims that they are protecting democracy.
Well, let's bring into the conversation Daniel Grausemer from Physicians for Human Rights. He's live on the line with us. Hi there, sir. Good to have your company. Given the widespread and high-profile resistance to this condemnation about force feeding, why has the Israeli government pressed ahead with it nonetheless?
Because they have a problem. They have a problem because they don't know how to solve the hunger strike of the detainee. And this law is a political law. We don't need this law because there is already a law to protect the patient. And this law is not to protect the well-being of the patient, but to solve a political problem with the hunger strike of the detainees.
I.e. to stop Palestinian prisoners dying, yeah?
Yeah, it's not only the Palestinian. Any detainee who want a non-violent protest have the only means that he can is to hunger strike. So it's not only the Palestinian detainee, but every detainee who wants to have a protest non-violent. And in fact, it's now the Palestinian detainee, but it's not only the problem of the Palestinian detainee.
But even if it's to the point of death, when should a physician stand in, as you see it?
That's a problem which is not new. We knew that several regimes like Soviet Russia or Guantanamo and other countries use force against the striker who don't want to feed themselves. So that's not only the problem in Israel, but we have international law. We have the World Medical Association, we have the Israeli Medical Association, which protect the doctors and tell us not to do unethical things like force feeding, because the state can't pass a law to force the doctor to make unethical things like force feeding.
How are Palestinians going to...
And which is not to protect the patient.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay on the line. How are Palestinians going to react to this law that's been passed? We've seen Palestinians out on the streets rallying against the many thousands of Palestinian prisoners being kept in Israeli jails. This is going to stoke their anger further, isn't it, surely?
I am not a I am a pediatrician. I am not a political man. I can only speak for the medical community in Israel, which is unacceptable to force feed detainees.
Understood.
For sure, there is a political problem, but that's not my problem. My problem is that they want to use physicians for their political purpose.
Thanks for getting a message across, sir.
In the hand of politicians.
Well, understand it. Thank you for getting a message across. We appreciate it. Daniel Grausammer from Physicians for Human Rights on the line there. Thank you for...